today we're going to wrap up our unit on solving quadratics by learning the quadratic formula, also known as the quadratic, well, I guess you could call it quadratic equation, but quadratic formula, where, okay, I know two math songs. If you remember from last year, it's same sign, add and keep, that whole one. Okay, my second math song that I know is to the quadratic formula, and it's ironically to the same tune. And it's x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so one more time, it's x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, that's the one and only time I will sing on video for y'all, but there you go. Okay, so we're going to use the quadratic formula to solve these quadratics. So the first thing we have to do is make sure that we have it set up in ax squared plus bx plus c format first. So this one, I need to bring the 8 over. So 3x squared plus 5x, minus 8 equals 0. Okay, so let's just quickly, and you don't have to do this every time, but we're just going to go ahead and label for ourselves, right? In this equation, a is 3, b is 5, and c is negative 8, right? ax squared plus bx plus c. And because that's a minus, that's why it's negative 8. So now we get to plug it into the quadratic formula. So we're going to write x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a, right? All over 2a. So we've filled it out using a, b, and c into our quadratic equation. So our quadratic formula. So now I just have to work it out. So I'm going to have x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root. So 5 squared is 25, right? You can even use your calculator if you want. Okay, so 25 minus 4 times 3 times negative 8. Again, I cannot recommend this kind of calculator enough, okay, because it does a lot of the work for you. So then we press enter, and that's 121. I don't know why I made that so big. Okay, all over 2a, which is 6. So let's think about this, right? It could be negative 5 plus the square root of 121 divided by 6, or negative 5 minus the square root of 121 over 6. We know the square root of 121, it's 11. So we could have negative 5 plus or minus 11 over 6. So let's do negative 5 plus 11, and then that's 6 divided by 6 is 1. Okay, or negative 5 minus 11, oops, not 111, enter, over 6. So negative 2.67. And those are our answers. Okay, what you'll notice when you're using a calculator, my calculator is going to use PEMDAS. So if I typed in negative 5 plus 11 divided by 6, my calculator automatically is going to do 11 divided by 6 first. Okay, we have to either press enter, like negative 5, plus 11, do that first, and now divide it by 6, or use parentheses to tell it, okay, I need you to do this part first, the negative 5 plus 11, and then divide it by 6. Okay, but that's the quadratic equation. Let's look at, I'm going to do number 4. I think it's easier for me to just kind of go across. So here, I know my A is 3, my B is negative 5, and my C, if I brought this over, would be 1. Can we agree with that? Yes. So I'm going to sing for you again. Get excited. So x equals negative b. Well, what if b is already negative? It's going to make it positive. Plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So notice when I did negative b, right, it's negative 5, which is positive 5. I put this in parentheses here because I'm not I want to make sure that when I square it, I'm including the negative, and then 4 times a times c. There we go. So x equals 5 plus or minus the square root. So I can use my calculator. I know that negative 5 squared is 25 minus 4 times 3 times 1. So plus or minus, why do I keep making this so big? All over 2a, which is 6. Okay, so 5 plus the square root of 13, right? So you're like, why did you do it different than last time? I knew the square root of 121 was 11. So that's why I wrote it out like that. I don't know the square root of 13, so I'm just going to include it like this. So 5 plus the square root of 13, I'm hitting enter to do that first, and then divided by 6, and I got 1.43, or 5 minus the square root of 13, all over 2a. So 0.23. Okay, so 5, if you want to do it in one thing, just make sure you're doing parentheses. So 5 plus the square root of 13, close parentheses again, divided by 6, 1.43, 5 minus 0.23. Okay, this is the entire lesson. There's no catch, there's nothing else. You can use this quadratic equation every single time and it will work. Now on your test, I make you solve certain sections using certain methods, so I can make sure you know how to do them all, but this is a great way to check if you like the quadratic equation. Okay, on this one, it's a little bit tricky. If I bring the x over, that's 2x squared minus x minus 7 equals 0. So a is 2, b would be negative 1, and c would be negative 7. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root. I'm going to sing it every time because I wanted to cement it in your memory. B squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Okay, so I'm checking it. Negative b plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So x equals 1 plus or minus, so I'm going to work smarter this time, not make a giant radical sign. So I have negative 1, the whole thing squared, right? And then minus 4 times 2 times negative 7. So what is that, 57? I can't see it on my screen. So 57 over 4. Okay, I'm going to double check it. This is 1, right? And then 4 times 2 is 8 times negative 7 would be negative 56. And then I'm subtracting negative 56, which is why it's so big. It's positive 57. So on my calculator, I can now do 1 plus the square root of 57 and then divided by 4 and get 2.14. Okay, it's actually not or, it should be and. And then 1 minus the square root of 57 divided by 4 is negative 1.64. And those would be my two answers. Okay, let's look at number 3. Okay, so if you want, you can go ahead and do it yourself and come back and check it. But I'm going to work it out. So I have x equals, oh, I forgot to write. A is 1, B is negative 8, and C is 16. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Okay, so x equals 8 plus or minus the square root. That's 64. Okay, and then minus 4 times 1 times 16. So that's 64. all over 2a. So what's the square root of 0? Like, what is happening here? So I have x equals 8 plus or minus the square root of 0 over 2. Well, 8 plus the square root of 0 is 8. Divided by 2 is 4. And then 8 minus the square root of 0 is 8. Divided by 2 is 4. So on this one, I only have one answer, and it's 4. Why is that? Okay, well, let's look at this trinomial. What do we know about that trinomial? Right? It's x minus 4 squared, because negative 4 times negative 4 is 16, but negative 4 plus negative 4 is negative 8. See how it's all connected? It's crazy. Okay, pretend that this is a z, because I just messed up. It's not like a trick. I just messed up. So let's rewrite it as, or we'll just make this one an x. That's easier. 4x squared minus 7x minus 2 is 0. Okay, so I'm going to use the quadratic equation. Gosh, I can't see this on my screen. I'm assuming y'all can see that. There we go. So a is 4, b is negative 7, and c is negative 2. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. This is where I have no sympathy for those of y'all who don't like to write stuff down. Okay, you have to write it down. Otherwise, even those of y'all who are like super mega genius, okay, you cannot keep track of this in your head. You just can't. So we're going to write it down. We're going to double check what we're doing because we're so smart. We know the smart thing to do is to show our work. So negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. Okay, so x equals 7 plus or minus, and then the square root. And then I have negative 7 squared, right? So that's 49 minus 4 times negative 2. Oops, look at, gotta check what you're typing in. 4 times 4 times negative 2 is 81. Ooh, this is gonna be a good one, right? All over 8. Okay, I say that because I know the square root of 81 is 9. So x equals 7 plus or minus 9 over 8. So, let me see this. 7 plus 9, 16, divided by 8 is 2. Okay, and then 7 minus 9 is negative 2, divided by 8 is negative 0.25. Okay, and I know that you guys are always talking about how great calculators are. Okay, and they really are, and I want to show you if you're going to be allowed to use a calculator, right, I think it's only smart that we use those calculators to check our answers. So let's look at, I think one of my answers should be 2, right? So I'm going to plug it in up here to see if it makes it true. So 4 times, and then 2 squared, minus 7 times 2, minus 2. And I hope that when I hit enter, I get 0. Magic, I did. So I know that when I take a 2 and plug it in here, it makes a true statement. Okay, let's see if it does the same thing with negative 0.25. So I have 4 times negative 0.25 squared minus 7 times negative 0.25, and then minus 2. Okay, I'm going to kind of go back. I want to make sure that I typed it in correctly because calculators don't make mistakes, but sometimes we make mistakes when we type stuff in. So 4 times negative 0.25 squared minus 7 times negative 0.25 minus 2. I'm going to hit enter and pray that I get 0, 0. Okay, and I'm going to show you one other like fancy trick really quick with the calculator. So if you're trying to check things, especially this kind of calculator. So here, right, I think one of my answers should be 5 plus the square root of 13. and then divided by 6, right? I rounded it to 1.43, but it's really this 1.434258546, on and on and on and on and on. So watch what you can do, which is really cool. Okay, if this is the last thing that I got as an answer, if I hit second, which is like my shift, and then do y'all see how it says ANS? Oh, you can't see where I'm pointing. Above the parentheses or the negative down here. So what I can do is I can type in 3 times answer. It's taking my last stored answer squared. Okay, so 3 times my answer squared minus 5 times what I got as my answer. Okay, so if I hit enter, what should I get? I should get -1. Check it out. Okay, so I know that this answer is correct. Okay, so it's a really cool way. Again, if we're going to have a calculator for a test, I feel like you should know how to use it in the best possible way. And checking your answer, you should be able to, on this entire test, plug your answers in to make sure that you got it correct.